Go.
Good evening, everyone. Before we start, I'd like to make a little announcement, which will surprise the officers, but I don't care. I'd like to thank my Deputy Mayor, Councillor Barry Hargrove, for holding the fort over Christmas and New Year when I wasn't well. Thank you, Barry. And now we can get on with the business. So, before I start the meeting, I have a few housekeeping rules. First, there is no planned fire alarm test this evening. If you hear the fire alarm, please leave by the nearest fire exit and make your way to the agreed assembly point, which is at St John's Churchyard off Druid Street. Council security staff will be available to help you. The public toilets are located off the main reception area. And please, can you switch off your mobile phones or put them on silence? Thank you for your cooperation. I wish to remind everyone that we are required by law to take a recorded vote at key budget decision meetings. This requirement applies to the final substantive vote on items 2.1 and 2.3. Following consultation with the group whips at the Mayor's briefing, the programme motion was considered and copies have been circulated. It sets out 8 questions on item 2.1, 4 amendments on item 2.1. Is this programme motion agreed? Thank you. The clerk will now explain which papers have been circulated.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Council Assembly. In addition to the agenda which was circulated 7 clear working days before this meeting, we also have a supplemental agenda 1, which has items 2.1, the Policy and Resources Strategy, and also item 2.3, setting the Council tax for 2020-21. Supplemental agenda number 2 has questions on reports and amendments, and supplemental agenda 3 contains the late question on reports. The following papers have also been tabled at the chamber this evening: responses to questions on reports, which is on blue paper, and the programme motion on white paper. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Chidi. All councillors have been granted a dispensation by the monitoring officer to vote on the council tax report. Do any members wish to make any other declaration of interest? No. When making your declaration, can you please specify if it's a disclosed pecuniary interest? But nobody's going to do that. Right. I have received apologies for absence from Councillor Helen Dennis, who's on maternity leave. I have received apologies for lateness from Councillor Margie Newins. And are there any further apologies? Councillor King.
I'd also like to give apologies on behalf of Councillor Evelyn Akoto, who's unwell.
And apologies from Councillor Dan White,
Can we please approve as a correct record the open minutes of the Council Assembly meeting held on the 28th of January 2020? The guillotine will fall at 10:03 p.m. There are 8 questions on the report as set out on blue paper circulated this evening. I will ask each member who has submitted a question if they wish to ask a supplementary. Members should ensure that their supplementary questions are genuine questions and not speeches. Supplementary questions must arise directly out of the original question or the reply. Councillor Bill Williams, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, I do. Does this budget leave us fit to fight the challenges for the next decade?
Thank you, Councillor Williams, for your question. In terms of what we can do as a local authority, I say absolutely yes, it does. In terms of what a failing Tory government should have done to support local government finances and our vision of amazing public services that we want to deliver, I think at best we have risen to the challenge and we have prepared the groundwork in our budget today to leave us ready for whatever this government chooses to throw at us next. So I think that there is a continuation of investment in some services that we are rightly proud of, and also some really good investment that I mentioned in my answer about kind of really good quality preventative services, particularly for our young people and their families.
Thank you. Councillor Lorraine Lauder, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I do. Does the Cabinet member agree with me that it's disgraceful that this Tory government welfare reforms are forcing people to choose between paying their rent or council tax and feeding their family? It's a choice.
I'd like to thank the member for their question. Absolutely, I agree with what you're saying. Of course, the question that you asked initially was about the impact of welfare reform and the rollout of universal credit on our council tax collection rates. We are having to be prudent and sensible this year because it is clear that universal credit is having an impact. But actually, the question that you ask is about every kind of individual human story, every element of crisis that our families are finding themselves in because of the horrific impact that universal credit is having on people's lives here in Southwark. I am therefore absolutely, well, not delighted, but proud that we are putting extra money into our emergency support scheme this evening, while other councils are removing them completely. And of course, more broadly, as we move to a world where we are even more exposed financially on council tax collection and business rates, it is a greater, even greater challenge, the impact that universal credit is having on our collection rate.
Councillor Martin Seaton, do you have a supplementary?
I do, Madam Mayor. But first of all, it's important to note that clearly, if each of us here suffered a 63% reduction in our salaries since 2010, how would we be living? So the question to the Cabinet member is this: does the Cabinet member think that the government acted responsibly in their planning of local government finances and the vital role for frontline services that we play?
Can I thank Councillor Seaton for his question? No, I don't. I think we are acting very responsibly this evening in the budget that we are setting. I am sad that it is only a one-year budget. I would like us to be planning for the long term. People who know me know that I like certainty, I like delivery, I like tangible things. But actually, we've had to set a budget at a time of unprecedented uncertainty, much of which has been created by this Tory government. They only put forward a one-year spending review. They have delayed again a fair funding review of local government finance. They seem to have no idea at all what role business rates are going to play in local government finances going forward. And the long-delayed social care green paper has been delayed again to the extent that they are going to bring forward legislation rather than even having that green paper. So I think it is time for a government that does have a 5-year mandate to really carefully and responsibly plan the level of financial resource that we need to not just set a 1-year budget, but to kind of plan for the longer term.
Councillor Victoria Elisa, have you got a supplementary question?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I do have. Could the Cabinet Member confirm the current value of the capital programme?
Can I thank Councillor Elisa for her question? I am delighted to. Here is something that we all should be rightly proud of. Our capital programme over the next 10 years is massive. It's worth over £2.6 billion, and nearly £700 million of that is in the general fund, and the HRA, where we are absolutely investing to tackle the housing crisis, it's worth about £1.97 billion. These are huge amounts, and we should be absolutely proud of the investment that we're making in our communities.
Thank you. Councillor John Hartley, have you got a supplemental question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks to the Cabinet Member for the original reply. Can the Cabinet Member provide an update on the work streams and the activities agreed by the Brexit panel?
Thank Councillor Hartley for his question. Very briefly, we will have an absolute uplift in the comms that we're doing to our EU residents around settled status. We have a plan for roadshows once the weather gets better. We are about to put out a call for interest to the voluntary and community sector so that we can support those more vulnerable groups who need help and support to get settled status. And we are also planning, working with hopefully the LGA, London councils and neighbouring boroughs to make sure that we spend the next 9 months really making our case for what local government priorities are for a new deal with the EU by the 31st of December. So lots going on, and there will be another Brexit panel meeting in April.
Thank you. Councillor Renata Hambers, have you got a supplemental question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I do. And thank you very much to the Cabinet Member for her response. And I do have a supplemental. And can you confirm that this year's council tax increase remains in line with our manifesto commitment to keep the increases at or below inflation? Thank you.
I'd like to thank Councillor Hambers for her question. Yes, this administration keeps its promises and has done every year since 2010. So,
supplemental question?
Yes, I do, Madam. I believe that the Council should continue to encourage growth, regeneration and the creation of new opportunities for Southwark residents. Thank you.
And can I thank Councillor Stones for her question? Lots of questions that I agree with this evening. Yes, I do. It is absolutely clear that growth and regeneration and the opportunities that we have created over the last 10 years have been absolutely amazing for the residents here in Southwark. They have delivered schools, they have delivered jobs, they have delivered apprenticeships, they have delivered new homes, and they have also delivered a substantial multi-million-pound receipt that we are plugging back into the vital frontline services that we all want to protect. And so absolutely we should be continuing to do that looking forward.
Thank you. And final question, Councillor Victor Chamberlain, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much for your response. I welcome the sentiment, but unfortunately this response doesn't guarantee that everyone that needs PrEP and would benefit from it will actually be able to access PrEP. So does the Cabinet Member agree with me that as a progressive council, we shouldn't be leaving people vulnerable, and people that we know will benefit from having access to PrEP should be given access to it? And if the government won't, Cabinet Member guarantee that if the government fails to meet universal access by April, that the London Borough of Southwark will step in and ensure that everyone that needs it can access PrEP?
Can I thank Councillor Chamberlain for his question? I am slightly puzzled that whilst asking for a commitment that's worth well over £800,000, that his colleagues in the Lib Dems have chosen not to put that forward as a fully costed amendment this evening. That would have been a good thing to propose, and you show us how it's done. What I would say is absolutely there's a clear sentiment in the answer today. We are a progressive council, but we are a prudent council. We do not even have the public health settlement from government yet, and we are, 4 or 5 weeks away from the new financial year. So I think we have to wait to get the settlement from government before we possibly make any further commitment.
Thank you. That concludes the questions. We now shall move on to the debate. So, the Cabinet Member for Finance, Performance and Brexit will present the report. Councillor Vicky Mills, you have 10 minutes in which to speak.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So there are multiple challenges we face as we set the budget for 2021, and they range from the nitty-gritty details in the schedules that have been presented today, but you know, they are also those big challenges of trying to set a budget when central government funding for this council is half what it was 10 years ago. But the biggest challenge, I think, surely, is does the budget we're setting this evening leave us fit for the future? Does it not just see us through the next year, but does it leave us prepared for the next 5? Does it lay out the groundwork for our vision of really amazing, high-quality council services that are not just fit for 2020, but are fit for the decade to come? And on balance, I say yes, it does. And I say it's absolutely radical in part, and there are some amazing new commitments that we should be celebrating this evening. So there is over £1 million for a Sure Start approach for teenagers and their families. We are at last aiming to work together to bring together the many agencies that can and should support our teenagers and parents at times of crisis. It is never a solution to fill in a referral form. And so our schools, our early help, our health, social care, voluntary sector and police should be working together to hold our children and support our families. And there is an amazing £1.5 million extra for preventative mental health services for children and young people. That builds on the £2 million investment we made last year. And there is new money as well to take a pause-style approach to our drug and alcohol services. We have really good work going on, but preventing death is a long way short of supporting a life changed and rebuilt, and that's what we should be aiming for. We're also mainstreaming our free swimming lessons, piloting an expansion of free gym, fully rolling out free theatre visits for primary school children, and a full rollout of nursery free school meals. So from Nunhead to Newington, from Dulwich to the Docks, every Southwark child should have the very best start in life, and every adult should have the support to lead a healthy life. And finally, there is a really substantial £2 million initial commitment to begin to tackle the climate emergency. But as well as radical, I'm happy to confess that there is a lot here that maybe is quite unexciting. There's a lot of continuity, there's a lot of steady as she goes. But when you're faced with a decade in which we've had to make savings of over £250 million, meanwhile facing a huge growth of pressure on our services because of austerity, because of welfare reform, then actually for us to stand here this evening and say, look at our amazing libraries, look at our green flag parks, look at our clean streets, look at our improving schools, look at our children's centres, look at our social care reablement, look at our improved outcomes for children in care and care leavers, look at the 2,500 residents we have already supported into work since May 2018, and over 100 apprenticeships that we've created in the same time frame. Look at all of that, and it is astonishing. But of course, for Southwark Labour, so much of this is business as usual. There is as well as that radical, that less exciting stuff, I think there's plenty of prudence in the budget tonight because of the uncertainty that we spoke about during the questions. The Tory government has spent the last 5 years being cruel, but also being chaotic, and it does need to start planning for the next 5 years. We need a proper budget and spending review for the long term. We need an increase in the funding for local government, and we need multi-year allocations. We need them to tackle the social care crisis we face, and we can't have any more sticking plasters as we have again this year for social care. And they need to be clear what their plans for local government finance through the Fair Funding Review and business rates is in the future. They also need to fund the many new burdens that they've passed over us over the last 10 years. They need to look at the problems we face, in particular as London boroughs, whether that's homelessness or no recourse to public fund pressures, and they must step up on education funding, particularly the challenges we face on special educational needs. And finally, most important of all, they need to recognise that it is 2020, it is not 2010. And you can't ignore a whole arm of frontline public services that local government is at a time when we know our communities are rapidly changing. There's a digital revolution and connectivity is vastly different to what it was 10 years ago. Our residents' needs, their expectations, they've changed hugely, and we know, of course, we face a climate emergency that has only become ever more acute. That we have delivered a decade here in Southwark of opportunity, of growth, of positive change, when actually when you look nationwide it appears that an entire decade has been lost to austerity, is absolutely testament to the Labour administration here in Southwark. So I want to thank my Cabinet colleagues, my Labour group colleagues for their determination to try and find the most progressive solutions to the challenges we face when we set the budget this evening. I want to thank our fabulous Strategic Director of Finance, Duncan Whitfield, and all the finance team, but I should also particularly thank Rob Willett. There is never a question that Rob leaves unanswered. Luckily, there's never one of my ideas that's left unfunded, and one of these days, hopefully tomorrow, he might catch his train home on time. So thank you very much, Rob. Yet again this year, we have a series of Lib Dem amendments, but not a full Alternative budget. It's almost if there are SRAs to be saved, maybe they should be amongst our half-hearted opposition over there. Best of all, we have a last-minute request submitted late for over £800,000 that seems to have not been included in their amendments at all. So I have to say, I'm not going to take any lessons on climate change from the party opposite, who, as far as I can tell, want to spend less, want to prevaricate more, want to set less ambitious targets, and whose record on this issue in office in Southwark and as Tory enablers in Westminster is one of dither and delay. And on innovation, I say this, that the very best examples of innovation under our Labour Council have been to reduce service demand and improve outcomes of residents rather than necessarily to generate income. So our Pause project, where women who had more than one child taken into care received really intensive support, or our young persons combined sexual health and addiction service, where young people go on to better sexual health, reduced unplanned pregnancies, overcome drug or alcohol addictions, and also receive really holistic support to access education, training and work. These are the innovations that we should be proud of. And as the person who's overseeing the growth in our commercial portfolio from a low of about £11.5 million 3 years ago to one that now generates in excess of £20 million a year, I'm not going to take lessons on the solid and sensible investments that we now need to do to make sure that we can continue to fund our vital frontline services. A speculative voluntary tourism tax or an innovative income team sounds like it comes straight out of W1A. So at a time of profound uncertainty and a time of rapid change, we know that those with wealth and privilege have always been able to look after themselves. So our job as Southwark Labour, our absolute duty is to serve those people here in Southwark who need us most. And we will never serve the most vulnerable in our community if we use money unwisely or if we fritter money away on badly run services. Just as Southwark families need to make choices about how they make ends meet, then so do we this evening. So there are tough choices. That includes saying that our smoking cessation programme will need to be more targeted. It says that we will plant less lovely, nice bedding plants in parks each year. It says that we will charge a little bit more for bulky waste collection, and it says we will charge if you are going to park your car at a leisure centre. And it says that if we need to invest more in the advice and support for residents as they mitigate to universal credit, then there is a little less money for advice elsewhere. So tough choices also mean that after careful thought, we are proposing raising council tax by 3.99% this evening to raise a really vital £4.5 million as well. Another tough decision. It's not one we take lightly, but making deeper cuts to services would be the wrong decision and one that we shouldn't make this evening. We know that this puts pressure on low-income households, and so that's why our council tax reduction scheme remains unchanged. It's one of the most generous, I think, across London, and it means that 12,000 working-age households will continue to receive support and will pay no more than 30 pence extra a week, and nearly 7,000 eligible pensioners will continue to receive 100% relief. So a tough decision, but I think it's the right one that we will take later. So finally, We should be proud tonight, Labour should be proud tonight, to present a budget that continues our decade of radical ideas, our decade of delivery, balanced with prudential planning for whatever the Tories plan to throw at us next. And most importantly, it leaves us fit for the future, a fairer future, of course, and the challenges of the years to come.
Perfect timing. Thank you. The majority opposition spokesperson to respond, Councillor Jane Salmon, you have 5 minutes in which to...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would also like to thank officers for all the hard work put into the preparation of the main budget, and especially the excellent support given in preparing the Liberal Democrat amendments. The Liberal Democrats have 3 amendments, all of which focus on real change and can be implemented now. The first is to deal with the climate emergency. The second is to immediately reverse your cuts to specialist legal advice budgets. And our third is about being more innovative around income generation, because we can no longer rely on this government to do the right thing. A year ago, Southwark declared a climate emergency, yet you've waited almost 12 months to establish a budget of £2 million, and there's no clear idea on how this money is going to be used. We are suggesting that the council can lead by example. We can make our fleet of over 200 diesel vehicles all electric and put in the charging points to support them for £1 million. Further, we can spend £500,000 to install a network of city trees, which with 10 stations would be the equivalent of 2,700 real trees. This would help to reverse the net loss of 1,200 trees by this Labour administration in the last 2 years. It was only a few weeks ago that this Council Assembly agreed a motion to support our EU citizens. But now we have to propose an amendment that reverses your cuts to vital legal support services to them and some of our most vulnerable citizens. We just don't understand how you can rationally justify this decision to cut the funding to Southwark Law and Citizens Advice Southwark. Any such cuts to these vital free services can only impact residents who find themselves in desperate need of expert advice. You should never cut funding to these hugely important bodies. It is inexcusable and somewhat shameful. This brings me to our third amendment. Local government funding is in crisis. We are still awaiting the outcome of the Fairer Funding Review, but I think we all know this won't contain good news for Southwark. More likely, it will funnel money away from London and towards the Shires, and the new Tory seats in what used to be your red wall. If we don't do something now, this council is going to run out of money within 12 to 24 months. It's time to take responsibility and find a local solution to local funding problems. If we want to continue to provide quality services for our residents, Southwark must generate more income in new ways. Increasing council tax and raising fees is not sustainable. There are other ways we can generate large sums of income if we start now. Our amendment proposes implementing a voluntary levy on visitors to our borough. This is supported by the LGA and could generate millions a year. Another example is the workplace parking levy. In Nottingham, this brings in almost 9 million a year. Our Amendment D proposes allocating just £270,000 to set up an income-generating team now. Instead of moaning about how hard done by we are, we need to foster a more entrepreneurial spirit. If you're going to keep on bashing us over the head about our time in coalition, let's not forget that it was a Labour minister, Liam Byrne, who left the note for the incoming government which said, "I'm afraid there is no money, good luck."
Austerity is as much on your heads as ours. And if that is not enough to give you pause, remember that during the coalition it was Lib Dems who secured the necessary investment, so we now have our 40% of energy needs supplied by renewables. This is treble the amount that Labour left us with. Rabbiting on about the past won't change anything. Real actions need to start now with our generation. We must not pass the buck to the next generation. I call on you to support our amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Salmon. Perfect timing as well. We're doing well tonight. There are 4 amendments to this report. We have a single joint debate on all the amendments. So can I call upon Councillor Maggie Browning to move Amendment A?
Thank you. I am pleased to move Amendment A as I believe that it makes funding commitments to vital schemes which we can all fully support. The commitment of an extra £50,000 to the Southwark Scholars Programme is especially welcome as it ensures that this fantastic scheme will continue. For those who do not know, the Southwark Scholars Programme was set up in 2011 to provide young people from Southwark with financial support while they complete their university studies. The scholarship is awarded to our brightest young people and is aimed at young people who come from households with an income of less than £25,000 a year. In this way, the Council has ensured that these young people are able to make the most of their time at university without the worry of the financial burden that comes with it. As a secondary school teacher, I know the life-changing impact that university education can have for the young people I teach, and I'm delighted that we are doing what we can to make sure talented young people are not put off from attending university. I look forward to a time when tuition fees are abolished and every person can attend higher education without the burden of student debt. I also welcome the fact that 2 of the places on the Southwark Scholars Programme will be reserved for young people studying modern languages or at an EU institution, thus demonstrating our commitment to being an internationalist and outward-facing borough within a global city. I am also pleased this amendment commits £100,000 to finance the initial cost of setting up and running a renters' union. As fellow council will know, a third of all homes in the borough are in the private rental sector, including in my own ward in Dulwich Hill. Due to a failure of the government to properly regulate the sector, many of our residents experience limited protections against rogue landlords, despite often paying extortionate rents. As a long-term renter myself, I welcome moves by the council to bring together renters in order to push for better rights and protections. As we in the Labour Party know, better protection in the workplace has always been won through the collective power of the trade union movement, and I welcome moves to use collective action to fight for better rental conditions for our residents. Finally, I welcome plans in this amendment to carry out a feasibility study in developing a black cultural centre in the borough, which celebrates the diversity of our borough and the fantastic contribution our BAME communities have made and continue to make in Southwark. It will also send a clear message, I hope, that we reject the racist narrative perpetuated by the Conservatives through their policies such as the hostile environment and their shameful inaction on supporting refugees. We know in Southwark that we are strengthened and enriched by our diversity, not weakened by it. I am pleased to support this amendment.
Councillor Jason O'Care to second Amendment A.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. I would like to welcome this amendment that will see funding for Southwark scholars made secure on a long-term basis. The Lib Dems had a taste of power and they reneged on their promise of introducing no tuition fees. In fact, they did the extraordinary thing of increasing tuition fees to £9,000, which ultimately negatively affected the most disadvantaged in our communities, and more specifically those in Southwark. As a Southwark Labour administration, our response in 2011 was to do what? To create the Southwark Scholarship to support our brightest and our best young people from disadvantaged areas, so that they could pursue their educational ambitions without the heavy financial shackles that the coalition government wanted to place on our young people. It's about a fairer future for all. And I'm pleased that the Council, with this amendment, will be able to help many more on top of the 88 young people we've been able to support so far since 2011. And this will do one thing, and one thing only. This will help narrow the gap in the higher educational attainment of our young people in Southwark. On the Black Cultural Centre feasibility study, I'd also like to join my colleague Maggie in also welcoming this amendment for Southwark Council to carry out a feasibility study into developing a Black Cultural Centre in this borough. This sends a different message to our Black community from the hostile messages and the environment that this current government has perpetuated. This callous Tory government, might I add. With this cultural centre, what we are saying is that we as a council want to celebrate Black heritage as well as providing space for a range of cultural and community organisations to use for meeting and events. We are saying we are here to embrace and not to disgrace. We are saying we are here to welcome and not to turn away. We are saying we are here to celebrate and not to denigrate. With the recent Windrush scandal and deportations a few weeks ago, this sends a clear message that there are still places of sanctuary and belonging in the UK for all of our residents across the country.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Neal to move Amendment B, a sustainable future for Southwark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's time to start taking a hard look at our budget and start thinking about how we can get the best from it. Not so much for short-term political gain, but how we can get the best from our financial resources to support our environmental resources. There will inevitably be resistance to change. Back in 2005, I remember we started running the council fleet on a 20% blend of biodiesel. They said it couldn't be done, but we pushed, and in doing so, we saved an estimated 160 tonnes of CO2 every year. Now that's about the equivalent of 300 return flights to Cannes. That would be business class, not economy. On the subject of clean air, may I thank Helen Hayes, our MP for Dulwich and West Norwood, for resisting pressure from trade unions like Unite and the GMB and voting against Heathrow expansion. And I'm sure we will share the disappointment that both the other MPs in Southwark simply caved into the intense lobbying and voted for expansion of that hub airport. The appetite for low-carbon solutions is increasing in our myriad communities. Low-cost action like the traffic gate in Brook Drive in St George's Ward make our homes safer, quieter and cleaner, and it's time to turn the tide and declare our streets safe for people. If traffic calming reduces the amount of tarmac available to parked cars, Madam Mayor, so be it. We need to get on board to tap into the strength of feeling on our estates and on our streets. At a time when we're desperate for trees to capture carbon, to control pollution and to green our cities, I know that this borough is losing trees quicker than even our, not as quick, but we are losing our trees at a rate which rivals the loss of council homes in this borough. Our amendment calls for fossil fuel fleet to be converted to electric. I had to reread that paragraph. Are we really still running our fleet on internal combustion engines? The workplace levy in our amendment will meet some opposition from business managers. No business manager will want to pay more fees, but they will have a simple choice. Pay for your staff to park or use the parking spaces for something better. We need to encourage our communities to come forward with ideas, as well as being seen to be responsive to those communities. Ideas are free, but good ideas are most precious. We need to be seen to be listening to young people in our communities and listening to their ideas on climate change. Finally, Madam Mayor, as elected members and, dare I say, influencers in this borough, it falls to us to demonstrate that we are taking personal choices to reduce our carbon footprint, and we need to set an example to the wider population. Please support this amendment. Please support Amendment B. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Adele Morris to second Amendment B.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In April 2019, all members of this council voted to declare a climate emergency. This is something that many of our residents are fully behind, and they want to see that their council is doing something more than just offering warm words. In my role as lead Liberal Democrat member on the LGA's Environment Board, I hear many examples of good work that other councils have already done towards changing their behaviours. For example, Eastleigh has both an interim and a long-term strategy, and has also declared a climate and environmental emergency. Cambridge has just refused an application for a gas-fired power plant. Cornwall is looking at geothermal energy, and Eastbourne a battery storage facility. Councils of all political persuasions are coming up with radical ideas. Southwark, meanwhile, is still mostly talk and not a huge amount of action. In terms of energy efficiency, Sutton has built 2 passive house schools, and Norwich has built award-winning passive house council homes. Passive house buildings are amongst the most energy efficient, with insulation being the key and with minimal reliance on additional heating and cooling. With fuel poverty becoming a growing issue in our communities, this council must do all it can to make future buildings more energy efficient. And we must also help residents who are already struggling with their bills. That's why the Liberal Democrat amendment proposes that we follow the example of some other authorities and employ a qualified energy efficiency and fuel poverty officer. The Liberal Democrats also believe that, like many other councils, including Kingston and Camden, Southwark should run citizens' assemblies. This involves an independent organisation selecting demographically representative samples of residents and then running the workshop sessions with those residents on behalf of the council. We believe that residents should be encouraged to play a more inclusive role in setting the council's climate strategy. We don't think this should be a consultative process, but a fully democratically devolved process. That's why our amendment proposes funding for Southwark citizens' assemblies for adults and young people. We also propose a Young People's Climate Change Emergency Fund and grant competition to enable young people who are the most engaged and will be the most affected by climate change to run environmental awareness or other environmentally related projects. We welcome the appointment of a climate change director and have had a productive meeting with him. We're looking forward to being part of the Partnership Steering Group and to finding out which community members the Council has selected to be on that group. We also look forward to hearing when that group is due to meet for the first time and hope that it is A, soon, and B, supports our call for a formally convened Citizens' Assembly. Please support Amendment B.
Councillor Hamish McCallum to move Amendment C, legal advice for the most vulnerable.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a legal aid lawyer myself, I know just how difficult it can be for some of the most vulnerable in society to access independent legal advice and representation when they need it most. And as a councillor in Southwark, I know just how vital the work of the Southwark Law Centre and Citizens Advice Bureau is. So imagine my shock, imagine my outrage when I heard of the council's plan to slash funding for legal advice by £81,000, coming on top of a 15% cut in 2016 and in real terms reduction of £150,000 in just 6 years. These are frontline services, assisting those in the most critical need, ensuring that government, Southwark Council and others are acting lawfully and challenging their decisions when they potentially are not. At a time when our extremist right-wing governments are threatening to take a sledgehammer to judicial independence and public law, it is nothing short of scandalous that Southwark's Labour administration are doing exactly the same thing. It is scandalous because the council's own equality impact assessment concluded that it is likely that this cut would have a disproportionate negative impact on people experiencing disadvantage or discrimination. It is scandalous because it is short-sighted. Effective legal advice saves the council money in the long run through accruing rent arrears, recouping welfare benefits, managing rent arrears and preventing homelessness. And it is scandalous Because alongside the funding cut, Southwark was seeking to better the independence of the Law Centre in restricting its use of funds, restricting litigation against the council even where it is merited or in the public interest. Why is Labour so afraid of proper legal oversight that they are seeking to suppress access to justice in our borough? They really are no better than Boris and Dom. It's the most vulnerable, the homeless and those deemed to have no recourse to public funds, who will be most affected by this unconscionable act. For all of Labour's condemnation of the hostile environment, this decision would create a hostile advice environment right here in Southwark. There is, though, an alternative. It is possible to protect these services and even increase funding to them, simply by cutting the council's spending on its own self-promotion. So I implore all Labour councillors, say no to your inner Dominic Cummings and vote to protect legal advice for our vulnerable residents and vote for this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor David Noakes to second Amendment C.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and welcome to your first meeting in the chair. The value of money that we spend is not equal. Sorry? Anyway, the value of the money we spend, she's still welcome. The value of the money we spend is not equal.
Hang on a minute. Can we start again, please? Because I don't know what's going on here. Let's cut you off in your prime, David. Right, are we ready? Right, go on, David.
Thank you. I'll repeat that just in case you didn't hear it. So the value of the money that we spend is not equal. And the reason that I say that is that although the cut to the information, the proposed cut to the information advice services, which includes generalist and specialist legal services, is comparatively small in terms of the overall council budget, the value of this money in terms of the difference it makes to some of our most vulnerable residents is unquantifiable. Furthermore, this cut is being made at a time when demand is increasing, not decreasing. The services provided by organisations familiar to us all, Southwark Law Centre, Citizens Advice Southwark, Southwark Day Centre for Asylum Seekers, Cambridge House, Blackfriars Settlement and Southwark Pensioners Centre, are there to help some of our most vulnerable residents who are experiencing discrimination in employment and housing, as helping people who are people with disabilities to make sure they're able to access independent advice and challenge the loss of benefits. And we've heard about the impact of universal credit, and providing valuable legal support and advice for vulnerable and disadvantaged migrants. In a 12-month period, from October 2018 to September 2019, these contracted agencies supported 750 people. But the benefits of their work mean that the money that we invest in these services more than repaid themselves. Some of the outcomes these organisations achieved included increasing income from welfare benefits by 900,000, managing almost £1 million of rent arrears, preventing 300 households from becoming homeless, achieving good outcomes for 116 immigration cases for disadvantaged migrants, including 51 people being granted indefinite leave to remain and resolving 27 complex EU settlement cases, and winning over 350,000 of compensation in employment cases. Bluntly put, investing in these services saves the council money and provides a desperately needed safety net for some of our most vulnerable residents. The Equalities Impact Assessment confirmed that the proposed budget reduction will impact disproportionately on BME, women and LGBTQI residents. Madam Mayor, we are all too painfully aware of the cuts that have been made to public services, both nationally and locally over the last 10 years, and the devastating effects of these cuts on some of our most vulnerable residents. Labour members are good at reminding my colleagues and I about some of the painful consequences of the coalition government when they were pursuing austerity. But this administration has also learned the cost of the wrong type of cuts, when they effectively reversed the majority of the cuts to the youth service with the introduction of the Positive Futures Fund. There are some areas of our services that the Council should protect from anything but genuine efficiency savings. This is one of them, and I hope Labour members, who may not have been aware of these proposed cuts until tonight, will do the right thing, support our amendment, and if they feel unable to do that, will ensure that the additional monies are found before the beginning of May to reverse the cuts to these desperately needed services. Thank you.
Councillor Humara Ali to move Amendment D, Innovative Income Generation.
10 years of cuts to services, young and old, families, charities and communities, have left Southwark wounded and ravaged. But knowing that the Tories would continue to cut year on year meant that any administration worth its salt should plan for all eventualities. But this administration is arrogant and caught asleep at the wheel. It thought that it could sit tight, weather the storm, and then, as if by magic, a Labour government might appear with a magic money tree. The Labour Party have failed. You have let our country down, and it's time to accept responsibility that because you are now the Tory enablers and are keeping them in power for the foreseeable future. Here in Southwark, you're punishing the very people you claim to help by continually ratcheting up fees and charges and reducing services when there are millions of pounds of untapped potential income from commercial ventures. How do you plan or continue to plan to deliver those amazing services if you go bust? We Lib Dems know that we are the source of most of your manifesto ideas. So this evening we bring you Amendment D, namely to build a small team to focus on innovative income generation to become self-funding within 12 months. After all, we are a central London borough with tourist zones, business districts and plenty of opportunities to diversify our sources of income. To fund this new team, we propose two things. One, a tourist tax, something we proposed last year and we now see is recommended by the LGA and in use in other councils. And two, as for councillors, if we are going to raise council taxes on our residents, then we must play our part with a reduction not only in the SRAs, but reduction and removal of the wholly unethical golden goodbyes and a reduction in the size of the cabinet. Whilst I will not advocate for government or the Mayor of London to shirk their responsibilities, we were elected to assure money and services for our communities. I therefore move this amendment and ask all councillors to swallow their pride and vote for it.
Councillor William Hungbo to second Amendment D.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've heard councillors criticising past action of the governments. This is the past. Well, let's talk about now. Let's talk about who is in charge of Southwark, who's running the administration, and who is making decisions affecting all our lives. We've been hearing a lot of words about innovation, but we don't see any actions. Firstly, across the border in Lambeth, they have generated £500,000 in just 2 years' time. By doing what? By just giving fine for people dropping litters. This is about innovation. That's what we need for this administration. And we are not saying that. In this world of financial constraint we are facing right now, we also need to reduce the size of this administration. I mean this cabinet. We have too many members in this cabinet. If we are talking about saving money, we need to talk about efficiency, innovation, and reduction of the number of the cabinet members. As I say, in this period of financial restraint, we also need to ask councillors of the cabinet to consider, to have the intention to reduce the special responsibility allowance at the same time that we are raising the council tax. Madam Mayor, those measures that we are proposing have been approved by the council officers, have been signed off by the council officers. We also mentioned ideas of proposing the voluntary levy. I think it was mentioned by Councillor Sandman. We all salute you for the work of this. Thank you, Jane, for that. I think that this amendment needs to be accepted because I know here among the cabinet members it's not popular to reduce your allowances or your numbers. I know in this building it won't be popular, but outside, our residents will salute this. It will be popular with our residents. Madam Mayor, our budget amendment is necessary to deliver a strong budget for the many, not the few. Thank you.
I have a list of members who have indicated they wish to speak. Right, first up is Councillor Richard Livingston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Liberal Democrat Amendment B blows a lot of hot air on sustainability, but it produces far more heat than light. They seem to think the best way of speeding up the Council's actions on the climate emergency is to make the process longer. They seem to think that the Council should be both listening more widely to new ideas, and we agree on that. Of course, that's what we're doing in the process that we're launching now, and not least with the Borough Conference on the 21st of March. But at the same time, they insist that the Council should put in place their own list of pet ideas before listening to anybody else. Of course, the do as we say and not as we do attitude is hardly novel for the Liberal Democrat group. But it's the wrong way to go about things. Now, I am not dismissing every idea that the Liberal Democrats have put forward tonight, but they clearly have given too little thought to either the costs of their proposals or how they expect to pay for it. The right way to go forward with these ideas is to engage with the Council's process to develop the climate emergency strategy over the next 4 months. I'm proud that this budget will be agreeing this evening will be setting £2 million aside for action to address the climate emergency. More than as identified in the Liberal Democrat amendment, so we can hit the ground running in terms of putting in place our proposals. Why take then this reckless gamble on the highly speculative income proposals in the Lib Dem amendment? Unlike Nottingham or Hounslow, Southwark doesn't have employers with huge car parks for employees to tax. We're working with other London boroughs to explore what the workplace parking levy might raise, but rather than plucking figures out of the air, let's see from that work what can be achieved. They propose cutting consultants and agency workers. They're forgetting they used to spend £12 million every year when they run the council on consultants. We cut the figures for both the amount that was spent on consultants and agencies by 3/4 when we took power. And which staff do they really think are going to be lining up to take their voluntary unpaid leave? If we want to save money, it's far more effective to take the steps that we've been doing in this budget. £230,000 worth of efficiencies for parking contract, charging diesel vehicles to park in CPZ, bringing income from a broader range of services for our cemeteries and crematoria. And with the Lib Dems' ideas of spending money, well, we already have a contract which looks to get the cleanest vehicles for our fleet. Why spend almost £1 million on replacing that? We have a monitoring station for air quality in Tower Bridge Road. Why put a new one by the river where the air quality isn't the same sort of problem? Councillor Neil was very kind to refer to the work we've done on street closures. Far more effective than these sorts of things about monitoring air quality is the fact that this week we've put in place our 8 School Street at Albion School. 10 schools have worked to get green screens. 2 schools in Goose Green Ward have gone further still, so they're installing...
Sorry, Richard, you've got to wind up.
I therefore urge you to agree this budget, which puts £2 million into the budget to address the climate emergency. And I also urge you all, whichever party you are in, to engage fully with the process to get that climate emergency strategy in place.
Councillor Sonny Lamb, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate the Cabinet member, Councillor Mills, for presenting a fantastic budget. Despite the challenging financial situation we find ourselves, I think it's quite very rich of the Lib Dems, to be honest with you, to accuse us of funding cuts. Maybe I need to remind them that they were actually the one who took out the Tory government, which led to all this financial situation we find ourselves.
And what I find very interesting and also encouraging in this project is the fact that Councillor Mayor was able to identify enough money, £100,000 for instance, to invest in bringing our country together, because she recognizes the importance of our diversity as a borough. And what I would probably suggest as well is, I don't know if most of you are aware that there is a program going on to bring the Africa village to London and to South London, and perhaps some of the regeneration going on in that borough. Maybe that's an opportunity to actually, when you're looking at this feasibility study, maybe you want to link it to that. Because where do you think we should have, Africa Center, especially a borough where predominantly Black of African origin? I mean, out of the PME you're talking about, probably about 40–60% of them are actually people of African origin, and especially Southwark as a very historical, borough, to have African village, situated in that borough, I think it actually encourage inward investment. And also, after the feasibility study, especially with generation going on Open Trail and Peckham as well, you can see it creates an opportunity for us to actually partner with, other agencies and even African countries who may want to invest in that, because it see the importance of that. So therefore, I support this budget, and I think it's the beginning, but you can also see the opportunities it can bring as well. Thank you.
Councillor Victor Chamberlain, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Air pollution is a killer in London. That's what Sadiq Khan said back when he launched the ultra-low emission zone. Sadly, that was the same week that he cut the vital RB1 bus, which was the only zero-emission hydrogen bus in the whole of the city. And it served one of the most polluted parts too. And we shouldn't forget that every single air monitoring station in Southwark has failed acceptable air quality limits. Many of these locations are on roads managed by the TfL and close to our schools. In the last year, air pollution on Borough High Street, just a few hundred metres behind us, was 4 times the level that's considered acceptable by the World Health Organization. Amendment B seeks to do something very tangible to improve the health and quality of life of Southwark's residents and draws attention that cannot be ignored through this scandal. In 1982, the GLC erected a sign at the County Hall, stating the number of unemployed in London. It's time that we took our air quality scandal just as seriously, and we have to take the campaign directly to the Mayor's doorstep. We should be proud to host the GLA in our borough, but like us, they have a direct responsibility to improve air quality for our residents. Installing a sign outside City Hall would show current air quality levels and focus the mind of the Mayor and GLA on this important issue. It also shows the millions of tourists and visitors that visit the South Bank every year that we as a council take this issue seriously and that we will hold ourselves to account. Even with the new ULEZ, our website acknowledges that vehicle exhaust fumes are the main cause of air pollution in Southwark. Now, research shows that traffic emissions are a large contributor to pollutants that damage roadside vegetation. We have to do better to improve the air that we breathe on our streets. And that's why this amendment is proposing to pilot city trees, which are an example of improving air quality, and each one represents the equivalent of 275 trees. That would be what we're proposing is the equivalent of adding 2,750 extra trees in Southwark. That's the same as were lost in this current administration as well. The council also, this amendment also proposes to end the scandalous use of diesel, fossil fuel emitting cars in our fleet. We can immediately convert the leases on this council-owned fleet, and doing this will do more for air quality in Southwark than any other single change that we have within our control. We can take that decision tonight. We know that each year, the deaths of hundreds of our residents are attributable to air pollution. As an asthmatic living in Borough, I know too well that our poor air quality damages people's quality of life. I urge the whole council to support Amendment B. Thank you.
Councillor Eleanor Kerslake, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to talk about the budget's commitment to children and young people. And I'm really pleased that, and I think it encourages us as councillors, as individual representatives, to be leaders on this. I'm delighted to see that two of our biggest commitments in this budget are to children and young people's mental health, that's £1.5 million, and to a Sure Start approach for providing support to teenagers and their parents, and that's £1.25 million. And I'm delighted to hear Councillor Browning's commitment to the Young Scholars Programme as well, put forward by a Labour group. I often tell Councillor Ali that she's in charge of the Council's flagship policy, which is on children and young people's mental health, and it absolutely should be our flagship policy, because the resilience and the value of our young people and their health should be given the highest priority, and it should be the measure of all of us when we come to the end of this council. It's no secret that since 2018, 4 young men have been murdered in my ward, and I believe passionately that Newington Ward is a fantastic place to live, full of excitement, full of opportunities, but I really worry that there are young people and children living there who don't feel that in the way they should, and they don't feel all the opportunities that are there. And I know this sounds a bit sentimental, but I look at my own son and I think about how someone goes from that very small, safe, young children's world into the kind of dangerous and ultimately tragic place that Raheem and Sadiq and Clinton and the young visitor to Southwark who was killed on Southern Walk and all the other people who've been injured in my ward ended up in. And I think it's looking at those things that could have changed, that could have been better, is where we get to the kind of brave decisions that we've got in this budget. These focus on prevention and they focus on having the right infrastructure for children and young people. They aren't a sticking plaster and they aren't a gimmick. And I think in Councillor Peter Babadine's excellent Overeem Scrutiny Committee on exclusions, we've heard time and time again the importance of having infrastructure for young people, having support that's there this year, it's there next year, it's consistent and they know they can rely on it. I think this should be a launch pad for Southwark Council's commitment to all children and young people, that they will have a fantastic start in Southwark, that this is a place where they can thrive rather than just survive. And I commend the Cabinet, and I commend Councillor Ali particularly for the way she's championed this. I think it's amazing that Southwark is doing this at a time of the incredible cuts we've had to children and young people's services, when we see other councils who've had to completely cut their youth provision, councils where they're having to reduce their school week by telling children they can't come in on Friday, and we're putting these kind of things front and centre. And I know, from sitting on that committee, I know that the opposition share a lot of this sentiment, which is why I can't believe that I haven't heard a word.
Sorry, Eleanor, your time's up.
Thank you.
Councillor Jasmine Ali.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to thank Councillor Mills for her excellent hard work and her rigour. I would also like to thank Councillors Browning and O'Sherry for their helpful amendments on scholarships. To date, we've actually supported 99 young people who otherwise may not have made it to university. So your amendment's very helpful. Unlike some parties, we are actually serious about sending young people to universities. Anyway, I just want to, before I get on to what I prepared, I did want to say that the way your amendments are, it just feels like it may have been better if you'd presented an alternative budget, really. But actually, what it is like is that you've just put a load of arguments and they're ill thought out. I mean, I want to tackle this issue about leaving the vulnerable. I mean, do you not know anything about what we are doing out there? I mean, basically, the hubs that we support, we've got a network of hubs for older people, hubs for adults with mental health. We're about to open a hub, an open access. It's as if we are leaving people vulnerable. And now, excuse me, let me finish. We have got a policy
We don't need to work with anyone and everyone because we have got a policy that we work with partnerships, experts in the field to make sure that when you are vulnerable, in Southwark, there is no wrong front door. So I want to put that to bed. Anyway, now I'll get on to what I prepared now, so if you'll bear with me, if I've got time. Okay, so the top line for my portfolio, adults 93.8 million, including commissions, children 60.3 million, education 8.5 million, minus the dedicated schools grant, dedicated schools budget 320 million. These are like colossal budgets. Children and adult services budgets make up 2/3 of the council's overall budget, and last year was the first year since this austerity madness started that Councillor Mills, all of us brought that on budget. And so basically this year is another good news story. We are balancing these budgets yet again. A big thanks to everyone in here, Duncan, his team, everyone, but not least everyone in the children's workforce and in the adults' workforce, because their commitment has meant that we can support the most vulnerable people. You know, the people who need our services most without, you know, affecting their quality of life. So, you know, good on them. So, it's not the case for every local authority. And basically, when you look at that, and maybe that's where the opposition are getting a bit mixed up, because actually, in London...
Sorry, Jasmine, sorry. I'm sure it was going to be fabulous, but sorry. Sorry, Jasmine. Councillor Damien O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Central government funding to local authorities has been reduced by 17% on average since 2010. We know that for a fact. However, we also know for a fact that the root cause of this was the government's bailout of the banks following the collapse of 2008. Of the three major parties, it was the Liberal Democrats whose 2010 manifesto had the lowest austerity measures, and that includes Labour. The very next line was going to be, it's a shame we didn't win. So here we are. Okay, so we can boo-hoo about the mean coalition government reducing local government grants, or we can take responsibility and do something about it ourselves. Central government has given us the freedom to do so. In 2016, I spoke to Assembly about the workplace parking levy, and I raise the subject again now. I'd like to quote from the Mayor's transport strategy. Commuter journeys to work make up 12% of all car trips in London. With over 750,000 people driving to work every day, a third of which are short trips, in other words, less than 5 kilometres. These could be walked or cycled. The workplace parking levy will put pressure on employers to discourage employees driving their cars to work. It will encourage employers to make their delivery process as efficient as possible, with the consequences of improving air quality with lower vehicle congestion, possibly freeing up wasted land for development, and helping fund transport projects. These public transport and healthy streets improvements also disproportionately benefit people from lower incomes. The scheme is not anti-business, and Southwark can determine any discounts on the charge, such as exemptions for small businesses or new startups. Discounts can also be applied for low emissions vehicles and blue badge holders. It's estimated that around 1,300 Southwark businesses provide car park spaces. At a levy of around £750 per space, Southwark could see an income of some £2.5 million. And that would be even if half of those businesses weren't eligible to pay the levy. And it would be up to the businesses as to whether they pass that levy on to employees or absorb it themselves. The system works well in Nottingham, the only local authority that has implemented it, but the Mayor's office are very enthusiastic about applying it in London. So let's be the leading London authority and implement this levy. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Stephanie Cryan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Councillor Mills and Duncan and the team for their hard work in putting together this budget, which I will absolutely be supporting. I would like to speak to Amendment A, and in particular the commitment to use £50,000 from the reduced debt financing costs to make sure we are able to continue the Southwark Scholar Scheme. This scheme has made such a positive difference to the lives of young people who have benefited from it. It's allowed school leavers from disadvantaged backgrounds to study for their degree without the fear of burden of debt once they graduate. And we know that this Tory government will not be reducing or abolishing tuition fees within the next 5 years, and therefore continuing to support these young people to university is essential and helps provide a best start in life. Over the last 10 years, we have seen government impose austerity on our most disadvantaged residents. And I'm sorry guys, I am going to lay the blame at your door. Austerity did start with you on that. We see people affected by welfare reform and the bedroom tax. And as Councillor Lord quite clearly said earlier today, people are facing a stark choice between whether to pay their rent, whether to pay their heating, or whether to eat, because they cannot do all three. And therefore, children growing up in these households do feel put off by the fees from university. That is why this is such an important thing for them. And this week, I attended the launch of a report from London Councils, which looks at the employment gap in London, focusing on needs. And whilst the number of young people not in education, employment or training has reduced over the last decade in Southwark and in London as a whole, we still see gaps in the level of needs when you compare the numbers from disadvantaged backgrounds to non-disadvantaged backgrounds there. And we know that young people with disadvantaged backgrounds are more likely not to be in education, employment or training, and that they are less likely to go to university and study further education. And that is why this Labour Council is providing and needs to provide as many opportunities as possible for our young residents to thrive and reach their full potential. And since the Southwark Scholar Scheme began, I did have 88, but I've now changed that to 99. Students have benefited and continue to benefit from this support. It makes such an immense difference. But also, I'm really pleased to see that, we are looking to actually fund two of those scholarships for students who either want to study in the EU or study a modern foreign language. Brexit and the risk of the Erasmus scheme ending to future generations of students will significantly narrow the choice and opportunity to study abroad. And that is why I welcome that commitment. We should not let the bad decisions of Boris Johnson, the most right-wing government since Thatcher. I grew up under Thatcher. I never thought I'd see a government as right-wing as this, but we're in for a rough ride in these next 5 years. And they're pulling the rug out from under our residents by denying them the same opportunities that previous generations had to study in the EU. So committing to an additional £50,000 is a small price compared to the difference it will make and has made to the life chances of our Southwark scholars. I fully support Amendment A and hope that all members in the Chamber this evening vote in support.
Councillor Johnson, Situ, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The inconsistency is astonishing. You said that we talk about the past all the time, the budget. The one opportunity where you could be forward-thinking, where you could be visionary, was the first two lines of Amendment A, the coalition government, and the second line is about 2005. So for you to say that we're always talking the past, but it's the exact same thing that you're doing, is rather inconsistent. I want to start by firstly thanking Councillor Mills for an excellent stewardship of another budget. A budget that both balances the books and responds to the big challenges of our communities, and one that is radical in terms of responding to the climate emergency. I should also thank the Finance Department, who offer advice both to the administration and somehow make sense of the opposition's proposals. As we discussed this year's budget, I'm reminded of my first budget 6 years ago. Freshly elected, it was around this time I gave my first speech. I talked about what motivated a young person from Peckham to stand to be a councillor, and I talked about our pride in our recent manifesto. The reason why I talked about that is because if we had an idea, you wanted to get ahead, our manifesto supported that. Our scholarship scheme showed that we were on your side, and I'm pleased that we're supporting that and further support today. If you had a young family, our healthy meal proposals, our free healthy meal proposals showed that we were on your side. And our commitment to apprenticeships, on the face of it, might have seemed as commitment to just young people, but it also supported people returning back to work as well. I mentioned this as three things unite 6 years ago tonight. Firstly, we are still facing significant cuts to our budget. You would have heard it before, but I'll say it again. Southwark can see 63 pence cut in every pound. Secondly, the messages to our community remain the same. that despite the cuts, despite the challenges, we remain ambitious and we remain on your side. In our area, in my particular area, we put additional resources in planning to ensure we continue to offer the best resources and best service to our residents. I'm also immensely proud to be part of an administration that is putting forward plans for a feasibility study to establish a Black Cultural Centre. This comes only a matter of weeks after a recent joint announcement from Councillor Lurie and myself in respect of a dedicated LGBTQ+ space in a development in the north of the borough. We are proud of our diversity, and this is an additional commitment that demonstrates that. Finally, and this is a really important one, the opposition are just hopeless. And the reason why I'll say that is because you had the opportunity to put forward an alternative budget, but you didn't. You put forward inconsistent amendments. An amendment to put forward a citizens' assembly won't be successful if you have no communication to make sure that people attend. So seriously, I feel the biggest shame is that our communities are
time's up. Sorry,
by
Johnson.
the opposition, and quite frankly, they deserve better.
Councillor Maria Linford Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last April, the members of this council voted to declare a climate emergency in Southwark and set the ambitious target of making our borough carbon neutral by 2030. To achieve this target, we will need to make sure that every household is supported to reduce their carbon footprint while still keeping safe and warm. Fuel poverty, defined as needing to spend more than 10% of the household income on fuel, affects 11,349 households in Southwark, according to official figures. Charity National Energy Action reports stories of children staying in bed during the daytime to keep warm when they should be studying or playing. Some people are so stressed about their energy bills that they live in a constant state of anxiety. Others have no choice but to live in a cold, damp home, making health conditions such as bronchitis worse. We are currently dealing with a case of a woman with 3 children and 1 baby, who is reduced to living in one room of a 2-bedroom flat by a combination of a damp and faulty boiler. I'm sure we can all tell similar stories. Poor insulated accommodation causes heavy fuel bills and raises carbon emissions in an attempt to keep warm. This situation is bad for them and bad for the planet. That's why we are proposing to appoint a dedicated energy efficiency and fuel poverty officer to help tackle fuel poverty in Southwark and help people make their homes as energy efficient as possible while keeping bills low. The climate crisis is doing irreversible damage to our planet. Bold action at every level is needed, and local government can be a leader in reducing carbon emissions. We will need to raise the efficiency standards of every home through measures such as insulation, double glazing, and new heating systems, as well as encouraging people to use fuel wisely. On average, these measures can save families more than £500 a year. But we must also make sure that no one in Southwark is left behind. A dedicated energy efficiency and fuel poverty officer will be able to signpost people to the support and advice they need to make their homes more energy efficient, including assessing grants and similar support. Please join me in supporting Amendment B to make this a reality. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Alice MacDonald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to pick up on my colleague Eleanor Perthlake's points on Newington Ward, and she said half of my speech, so maybe I'll try and finish it off. Again, I wanted to welcome the investment and the prioritisation for children and young people in this budget and the services set out and the extra investment. In particular, and I want to welcome, I know Councillor Koto's not here today, but her work on the Positive Futures Fund. And I think it's a real shame that the opposition hasn't recognised that investment in children and young people.
The Positive Futures Fund was launched last year. It's already supported youth-led projects across the borough. And if you look at the list that's been supported, it's young people who are doing comics on mental health and tackling knife crime. It's Inspire at St Peter's providing holiday services for young people. And I'm proud that we're putting extra money in to expand that even further. I think we have to, as well as what's out of this budget, there is a lot of other things we're doing to look at how we provide youth services effectively. And I really welcome the review that's going on to look at how we deliver that more effectively and with more innovation. And I think, and I know a number of members opposite were on the youth violence panel that we had, there was a lot of points around communication and how we need more communication with our young people, not less. And I know it's an easy target to say, let's cut the communications budget, let's not do it, but I think that will have a real detrimental effect on how we communicate with our residents. And someone said it's about promoting the council. It's not about promoting the council, it's about promoting the services that we have for our residents and making sure that they can access them. And I want to finish just by saying that I think you have to remember that behind every number in this budget there's a story and there's a person, and it's the parents in Brandon Estate who are fighting for better provision for their children. It's the organisations like Mentivity and II Child who are working to find the funding in the face of government cuts to support different communities, and it's young people themselves who are really fighting for the futures that they, not that they deserve, but they're their right. So I really want to welcome the budget tonight and the investment in young people we put forward.
Councillor Kieran Williams, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So here we are again. This is my 6th time of setting a budget, and it's the same place as always. It's that mix of pride that we've got to a place that's a budget that works, that balances for our community, and there's allowing us to do more for the people of our boroughs. We've done every year I've been here, and every year we've been a Labour administration for the past 10. And deep sadness that we're having to do this in a place where so much money has been taken out of our borough. And there's the money that's come out of the council, and that 2/3 nearly now. But then there's all the money that's been taken out of the pockets of our residents through the changes that have happened to welfare, some of those that your party voted for, but many others as well. And it's making our place, our country and our borough a harder place for everyone to live in. We had just this week the report from Michael Marmot around health inequalities, seeing that health in our country is going backwards, that people are living shorter than they used to, that health inequalities are getting wider. We know that in Britain today, young people who were born in the last 4 years have got the highest risk of living in poverty in the last 60 years. That's a country going backwards. That's not somewhere that any of us should be happy with or settled with. And that's why we as a party have put so much effort into getting this budget right this year, like we do every single year. We didn't, as the Lib Dems appear to have done, just look at it the night before it was due in and come up with a few things off a quick Google search and a dusting off last year's budget amendment. We didn't put in the things that they know we've knocked back every single time, because we want our residents to understand what's happening in our borough. I think it was Einstein that said it's insanity doing the same thing again and again and again and expecting a different result. No, instead, my group have looked again and again at the detail of everything that we're trying to do in this borough. We've gone through every line of the budget as a cabinet, but actually as a whole group, and we've come up with what we think is the right thing to do for our borough. And that is investing in children and young people. It is all the things that Eleanor described. Investing in Sure Start for those teenagers, investing in mental health, investing in free healthy school meals. They're the things that we know will make Southwark a more equal and fairer place. And we've got there through hard work of making the money go further. And we will keep doing that hard work, because we know, as it says up there, that we should be spending every pound that we get for the best interest of our residents, like it was coming out of our own pocket.
Councillor Eliza Mann.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Welcome back in good health. At the last Council Assembly, we unanimously agreed to vote for a motion to support our EU citizens. Yet here we are with a proposed budget that decreases independent legal advice and support to vulnerable communities like them. That's why our amendment will restore this funding to Southwark Law Centre and the Citizen Advice Bureau as essential services. And I hope that you will vote in favour of it. Whatever our party affiliations, we should not let party tribalism harm our most vulnerable communities. This is even if that means independent advice might show us and the council as not being right. It must be independent of conditions on the funding. I came to this country from Sri Lanka in 1975, when many of you were in nappies and some of you weren't born. I was warmly welcomed with open arms. In my letter from my school hospital said, "Come and work with us." I had the support and encouragement I needed to lead a successful career as a nurse for 25 years and 18 years as a counsellor in Southwark. Although there are times I have felt discriminated against, it has never been like it is now. As a result of the past 3 years of this divisive government, there are rises in discrimination and prejudice and sadly racial attacks, whilst people are facing homelessness and poverty worse than I have ever seen. Now, we cannot stop the Tories, but we can make a difference in Southwark. And that's why I call on all of you to put aside your differences and do the right thing in supporting our amendment on legal advice for the most vulnerable. Which brings me to climate change and the importance of air quality for our Southwark residents. The climate emergency is not a publicity stunt, but a call for a real action now. I'm not prepared to leave the solutions to our next generation. As the trustee for Southwark Council Pension Investment Panel, I have helped drive our investments away from fossil fuels and encourage low carbon investment in areas that help our planet. Real action and real change. You can support the same thing by voting for our amendment on climate change. As the opposition spokesperson for children and schools, I hear all the time their concerns about the environment. That's why our amendment proposes giving them real money to start helping Southwark deal with the climate emergency. We have responsibility to all our children.
Can you wind up now, please, Eliza? Sorry.
To vote for a more sustainable future for Southwark with our amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Gavin Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Labour councillors have done an excellent job of recommending this excellent budget, so I'm going to concentrate my comments on challenging some of the more misleading statements that have been made by Liberal Democrat councillors this evening. The first one that I want to concentrate on was Councillor Salmon stated, and I quote, "This council will run out of money in 12 to 24 months." So the Liberal Democrat Finance Lead has analysed the budget and the accounts of this council and come to that conclusion. As this is clearly and demonstrably untrue, I can only conclude that Councillor Salmon has done no such thing and has simply read out some ill-thought-through words that she has failed to reflect upon. Dare I suggest that it's part of the same pattern of behaviour that means that we once again do not have an alternative budget before us tonight. Many years ago I used to work in Lambeth, and whatever their failings, Lambeth Liberal Democrats always put forward an alternative budget. They went through that work, and I think it's something that you should reflect upon as well. The second comment I want to challenge is Councillor Salmon's comment that austerity is as much on your heads as ours. Well, I guess at least there's an implicit admission that it is on their heads. I think most people will regard it as brazen chic. Nobody will forget that it was Lib Dem MPs, enabled by Liberal Democrat councillors, who marched through the lobbies with the Tories, supporting horrific policies such as swinging cuts to the council, the bedroom tax, and the health and social care bill. And finally, Councillor Neil's comment is aside that there was a loss of council homes in this borough. This is fundamentally misleading, as he well knows. This is a council which proudly and massively expanding house-to-house provision in this borough. It is right to buy, Councillor Neil, which led to homes and money, homes moving into the private sector, a policy made much worse by Councillor Neil's party when they were in power.
Sorry, Gavin, sorry. What? Yeah, Councillor Neil, what's up?
Madam Mayor.
Order, I don't want to do a burko on you. Right, what? Graham?
I would like to make a point of personal explanation. I understand under council procedure...
Labour group, could you let me just... Sorry, Graham, start again. We were rudely interrupted.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I understand I heard my name mentioned, and under Council Procedure Rule 27, I would like to ask the councillor, what is he saying about me, because I can't hear very well, and I would like to make it clear, if I may, Madam Mayor, I fear that he may have quoted me incorrectly, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Right, okay. I shall bring in the clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Your point was that you didn't hear what he said, so I'm not exactly sure what your personal explanation is.
No, Madam Mayor, if I can address the clerk directly, no, in fact, I heard my name mentioned quite clearly, but if I may, what I didn't hear is what my colleague, what my councillor colleague said about me, all the words that he attributed. Excuse me, I'm talking to the clerk. Excuse me, please. And as I was saying, Madam Mayor, to the clerk, I'm not sure if the words attributed to me are words which were actually said by me. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Gavin Edwards will start again without interruption. Hang on. Graham, will you sit down, please? Right, Councillor Edwards, can you continue and not start from the beginning, or we'll be here all night?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was referring to Councillor Neil's comments where he compared a loss of trees to a loss of council homes in the borough, which he quite clearly said, implying that this council is not committed to a massive expansion of council homes in this borough, which it is, and he knows it is misleading to make that reference.
Councillor Neil, if you interrupt again, I'm going to have you removed. If you want an explanation, you can wait until he finishes, okay? And then it's all right? Right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, in reference to those comments, Councillor Neils knows only too well that it is right to buy which is leading to homes moving into the private sector once they are council homes. This is a policy which was made vastly worse by the policies of the Liberal Democrat Conservative government which he supported during 2010 to 2015. Councillor Humbo says that this is all in the past. Unfortunately for him and his colleagues, and in particular Councillor Neil, Southwark residents do not easily forget the Liberal Democrats' historic betrayal of progressive values when they participated in that government. I strongly recommend this excellent budget to members that they vote for it because it is radical and sensible. Thank you.
Councillor Neil, do you want to say something?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the facts speak for themselves. We are losing trees at a great rate in this borough. But unfortunately, and I speak as a council tenant, we are losing council houses faster. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Peter John, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, the best laid plans sometimes go awry. I was going to announce at the end of this council assembly something about my own future, but our super soaraway snooze has beaten me to the punchline, as has the SE1 website. So I'd better make this announcement formal before somebody else announces it. Madam Mayor, we're in reflective mood tonight, Councillor Mills is, because we've been talking about a decade of delivery through our budgets. And it is a decade of which I'm incredibly proud. And I've been incredibly touched as we've talked about schemes like the Southwark Scholars, which were established to address the triple whammy that the coalition government inflicted on our young people, trebling of tuition fees, the removal of the EMA, and record youth unemployment. That is why we, as a Labour Council, responded in the way that we did. One of the many things that we have done over the past 10 years, the 10 years in which I have been leader of this council. And as I reflect 10 years as leader of the council, 16 years as leader of the Labour group, I have concluded in recent times it's time for me to move on and let a new generation lead this council in the next decade. So tonight, Madam Mayor, I'm announcing that I will resign as council leader on the 25th of March this year. A new council leader, I hope, will be elected on that date. And it's a new council leader who I'm sure will take this administration to even greater heights and make Southwark an even greater borough than it is already.
Well, what can I say? It's been a privilege to know you, Peter. When I came on the council as a rookie, you, Fiona Colley, Paul Bates, and the Labour group of that time were fantastic people, and they still are. And it's not funny, but I'm going to miss you a lot. I well remember the days when you, Councillor Soames and I were dancing to ABBA at Labour Party conference. I remember the days when, as a rookie councillor, I was really upset that I might have to miss the council assembly at the Old Town Hall in Peckham Road, and you said, Sandra, don't worry about it, you're always there, but we still won't miss you. But I just say it's the end of an era. It's going to be different without you. And I just want to say thank you for all your hard work. I know your selfless devotion to Southwark, the people of Southwark, the community of Southwark. And I'm going to stop now because I'm going to crack up. And now we'll get back to business. Chidi will get me a tissue in a minute. The next person is Councillor Bill Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm also partially deaf, so I'll speak loudly and faintly. Carrying on from what Councillor Edwards was saying, Councillor Hanbo, I will never, ever, ever allow you to forget the past. I will never allow you to forget that you were the enablers of austerity that we're still enduring. I will never allow that party opposite, the Liberals, to forget that it was their MP of Bermondsey and Old Southwark that instituted those cuts. Cuts to the legal aid system, the deepest ever since its introduction. So don't give us any lessons about cuts. The same contempt that was shown then is shown now with no alternative budget. Content for the people of this borough. Absolute utter content. Hamish, where have you been for the last 12 months? That amendment, we passed that last year. Have you been asleep, have you? Where have you been? Writing David Steele's resignation speech. What have you been doing? Look at the table. Item question 6 in the blue papers. We might be raising council tax tonight, but we could be number 1 and number 2. Westminster and Wandsworth with no services at all. None. I worked in Westminster homelessness sector for 26 years. They've now got the biggest homeless population in the country. We could be like them, or we could be number 32 and number 33. The Lib Dems of the burbs, where they charge for everything. This budget is innovative, it's creative, but most of all, it's prudent. And I commend the budget without their lessons.
Councillor Nick Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor John, we're going to miss you when you're gone. Oh. Every time I've been in this chamber, I've been reminded of the old Monty Python sketch, The Life of Brian. Some of you might know it. The two radical groups, the people's front of Judea, and the other group, the Judean people's front, squabble amongst themselves, obsessing about the differences. And in the meantime, the Romans get on with ruling. This is what we've all become. And we can indeed go on as we have again tonight, to continue to argue amongst ourselves. We can play bullshit bingo. You can say coalition and austerity, and we can say you missold the Hague state and took us into the Iraq War. But it doesn't get us anywhere. Whilst we squabble away, a Tory government with a majority of 80 seats is embarking upon a rapid and systematic process of cultural and economic deforestation. This isn't any old Tory regime. I would agree with Councillor Bryan, we are in pride. It's a deeply ideological peeling back of decades worth of welfare state. Priti Patel is Home Secretary. It sounds like the punchline to a bad joke, but sadly it's not. It's the new reality. Much though you hate to think this, you must all know deep down the Labour Party will not be able to stop the Tories on your own. So I'm not going to spend what time I have left criticising the proposed budget. Yes, there are things we would do differently, but that's beside the point. We all have bigger battles that all of us should be fighting. A couple of days ago, I read an article by Polly Toynbee. It was in The Guardian, so it must be true. She wrote that the only way to a Labour victory may be a pact with the Lib Dems, what Tony Blair calls the New Progressive Alliance. I think she's right, much though it pains me to say it. So I invite you to listen, and maybe even use some of our proposed budget amendments around income generation, tourist tax. As an entrepreneur myself, I know the value that a standalone income generation team could bring, and can see the potential to help stem the revenue shortfall. Look at our ideas in the spirit in which they are meant. They are constructive criticism, good ideas, fresh thoughts, all born of a shared recognition that with an ever-reducing budget, we can and we must find ways to do better for the residents of Southwark that we all represent. And do you know the best way to do this? It's by working together.
Councillor Dora Dixon-Farr, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish to speak in favour of the budget commitment to continue funding the Southwark Scholarship University programme, which fittingly is probably one of Councillor John's finest legacies. It was his idea. I was a cabinet member for Education and Children's Services when I had the honour of establishing and overseeing this programme, and together with the leader, Councillor John and Councillor Wingfield, and some of the first cohorts of the students, we were able to meet the Queen and introduce those young people to them. This scheme is absolutely life-changing. It really is. When those young people walked into this office and had their interviews, you could see the hope in their eyes. You could see the longing. They wanted to get a degree. They wanted to do well. and yet they didn't want to leave with financial debt over their head, which, and I know the Lib Dems don't want to hear this, but it was their coalition government that imposed this fee on these young people. So, Madam Mayor, this is really, really an important scheme. I'm really pleased that Councillor Mills has found space in the budget for this. I'm very proud to say I've kept in touch with some of those young people. We've had teachers come through the scheme, we've had a doctor who's able to do some of her training at King's College Hospital, and we've got a young man now who is doing his last set of exams to become a barrister, and he's from Camberwell. So people from our borough. I just want to also just say that we've had nearly 100 of these young people come through this programme, and many of them have come through to what you don't hear about. They've come through real adversity, you know, either socially. I mean, one of the young men who came through at the time I was responsible had lost his mother during his GCSE exams, but he carried on. We've got people who've actually academically been challenged, so they had to have special help to actually get them through their GCSE courses, and now they're looking forward to going to university. So this is really, really important. This is really socialism in action. And just really quite quickly, as Cabinet Member for Culture, I was able to persuade the Africa Centre to actually come to Southwark. They wanted to go to Hammersmith, we changed their minds, they came here to Suffolk Street, and they did fantastic work. So the work that Councillor Situ and others are trying to do to get Black Cultural Centre, I think will be absolutely fantastic, and will go hand in hand with the Africa Centre that's already here in Southwark. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Anud El-Samurai, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And Peter, I'm sorry, you have, we've not always agreed in any way whatsoever. But we agree on the value of public service, and you've clearly been an incredibly committed public servant to the people of this borough, so thank you from the opposition. I also want to thank officers who've worked incredibly hard to support the opposition with putting forward our amendments, and also to our team of councillors, including particularly those on OSC, Councillor Salmon and Ali and Chamberlain, for the really hard work they put in. And I just think it's really sad and a bit mean and petty to be kind of sniping and saying people don't work hard. They do, we all do, and let's just give each other a bit of credit. I also think it's fascinating the way the administration is so obsessed with the format of our amendment. So people maybe don't understand, or they're desperate to tell the opposition what to do, in which case you're very welcome to spend some time in opposition. And the way your national party's going, you may well be doing that sooner than you think in 2022. But basically, what happens is the council produces a budget report, which we all get to vote on. And what you do with that report is you amend it. And so therefore you can put in one amendment, or you can put in two, or you can do, as we have done, three. And actually, it makes much more sense, and we've done this for years, so I don't know why you're all so concerned this evening, for the opposition to focus on what really matters, both in terms of the priorities for us, and you can see this evening that's very much around the green agenda, or in terms of some serious mistakes which we believe you may be making. And the legal advice one is a really serious mistake, and I urge you, after this evening, particularly your backbenchers, find out from your leadership what on earth is going on there, because that will really affect people's lives. Actually, the opposition agrees with a huge amount in your budget. So, as Councillor Johnson was saying, it's not about squabbling about things and opposing for opposition's sake, but it's about us suggesting some serious constructive suggestions. The fact that the Cabinet member 3 times said, I will take no lessons, well, frankly, that's exactly the problem, that you don't listen. The arrogance, the patronising approach that we've heard this evening is unacceptable. Actually, you have listened, you have taken lessons, whether it's Golden Goodbyes, whether it's Southwark Life, whether it's the nighttime levy, whether it's youth services, whether it's day centres, whether it's homelessness. These are things we have raised year after year in our amendments, which don't look like what I think you want it to look like, but they're amendments, and every year you mock them, and then we see them actually happen. So you do take lessons, and as I say, I really hope you would take some lessons this evening about those legal advice contracts. If you do nothing else, and Councillor John, if your legacy over the next few weeks isn't to save those services, and please go and just engage with the people who are on that front line, because they need you to. Thank you.
Councillor Paul Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am not resigning. Madam Mayor, I want to talk particularly in the budget today about, it is not the budget any of us really want to present. We want to present a bread and roses budget, but in reality this is a bread budget. We are a council that has been cut back to the bone by a Conservative government, aided and abetted by the Liberal Democrats, to a point where we are struggling to survive. But let's have a look at what those services are. What do we believe are basic services for the residents in our borough? We believe things like the Southwark Scholars Scheme is a basic service for residents. We believe things like free healthy school meals are a basic service for our residents. We believe that free theatre tickets for primary school children, building on the legacy of a Labour government that opened every museum in the country, we believe that that is a basic service for our residents. And not only that, it is the commitment of this council to make sure that those young people are seeing professional theatre productions on union agreements, expanding our commitment to a living wage wherever you are. So our young people can see artists on stage and backstage that look like them and not be frightened of a freelance, precarious career as an artist, because they can afford to get by, because our local authority is making sure that people pay properly. Pay properly in the hotels down Tooley Street, pay properly in our council, pay properly for the services we procure. We are providing working people with the ability to become artists, to further develop and enrich themselves. But we are also developing the ability of artists to become dignified working people by receiving a wage which they deserve. My one tragedy, I would urge the Cabinet member to look again at this, is that this policy, those free theatre tickets, are only available to young people in primary schools. And there are 13 children over there whose amateur dramatics would be vastly improved with a little bit of professional tutelage, because the lack of serious passion, the lack of serious understanding, the lack of radical or meaningful alternatives suggests that your acting is just not up to par. I commend this budget and I commend the Labour Party's amendments.
And finally, Councillor James McCash, please.
So I wasn't initially going to speak, but I think there's been a point in our amendment, Amendment A, that we haven't really talked about enough. So I'm talking about the Southwark Renters Union. Because at the last meeting we spoke quite a lot about the housing crisis. And on my way home, I reflected on that quite a lot. And I thought about what is a housing crisis? And it strikes me there's two types of housing crisis. The crisis of supply, when there are not enough homes and homes are destroyed, like after World War II. The second type of housing crisis is a crisis of demand, when there are too many people, like after the baby boomers in the 1970s. But we do not have that type of housing crisis now either. In fact, it strikes me that in one sense there is no housing crisis at all. Because in 2011, there were more bedrooms per person in this country than at any point since the Black Death. No, we do not have an issue with there not being enough homes. We have an issue with the homes being in the wrong hands, under-occupied, empty, not being used properly. And we do not have a crisis of housing, we have a crisis of greed. And one way to deal with that is, of course, through our ambitious council house building programme, allocating homes on the basis of need, not on the whims of the market, and Councillor Pollock's record stands for itself in that regard. But also we have to deal with the homes in our borough that are owned and under the control of unscrupulous landlords. So we've all heard the horror stories. Boilers breaking, flats freezing over, landlords turning up unannounced and unwelcome, rents being ratcheted up without a thought to the pain that causes. And these scoundrels think they can get away with it. In fact, these scoundrels know they can get away with it because they are accountable to no one. But today, here in Southwark, that changes. Because despite crippling Tory austerity, we have found £100,000 to dedicate to the Southwark Renters Union. This is a collective response to a collective problem, supporting tenants to fight to defend their own rights and their own interests. It is a rebalancing of power from the property class who live off what they own to the vast majority of us who live off what we do. The Labour Party was founded on the principle that working people can represent ourselves and fight for ourselves, and that is a principle that we are putting into action tonight. Thank you.
I'd like to call upon Councillor Vicky Mills to reply.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It's certainly a challenge to both pay tribute to Councillor John and also respond to the last couple of hours of debate. So I say this, our budget shows the very best of Peter's leadership. It's progressive, it's radical, it's prudent, it's persistent, it's astonishing, and it's slavishly focused on getting stuff done. Your leadership, Peter, means not only do we have a decade of delivery to look back on, but I know that our hunger is undiminished for the decade that we face in the future. Very quickly, we can argue the toss over alternative budget or otherwise, but I think we can all agree that we did forget to submit questions, just like it seems you forgot to read last year's budget papers. On independent advice service, let's be clear, our contract is still worth nearly £1 million. Let's not pretend that we are doing something other than continuing to support really brilliant independent advice in this borough. Let's also be clear that the caseload that is growing is amongst our residents who are receiving universal credit, and an absolute equal amount went back into supporting those through our Lively Laws team. I say I was shocked to learn that the money is running out in 12 to 24 months too. However, when Councillor Salmon mentioned that austerity was in fact our fault, I was relieved to realise that she had truly entered the realm of fantasy. I think perhaps Councillor Hungbo has joined her there, because I think what you were saying, that if we cut 2 cabinet members, we might not need to raise council tax. Now, I hold my hands up. I am well paid for the job that I do, and I absolutely seek to kind of earn every penny of that, but it is not a 7-figure sum. Other things that you seem to have forgotten to look at is perhaps the response to question 4, where our ambitious 10-year tree planting programme is set out. When I say ambitious, I mean multi-million-pound ambitious. Councillor Norris accuses us of only delivering warm words. Well, we have delivered this. Since 2010, this council has cut its carbon emissions by nearly 40%, and in terms of our pension fund, in the last 3 years alone, we've seen a carbon footprint reduction of nearly 55%. They are not warm words, they are amazing, amazing achievements. So whilst we are radical, it strikes me that the Lib Dems are a little ridiculous. I'm not clear whether, we're told to cut our cloth, we're told there's no magic money tree, and yet suddenly there's a whole raft of things that we should be investing in. So I say ignore their amendments, have faith in the radical, prudent and progressive budget that we have put forward this evening, and the excellent amendment from Councillor Browning and Councillor Ocheri, and vote for those 2 things this evening.
We shall now move to the vote on the amendments. Right, we're going to vote on Amendment 1, Amendment A, Councillor Browning and Councillor Ocheri. So those in favour of Amendment A? 46. Those against? Abstentions, my favourite word. 13. Amendment A is carried. Vote on Amendment B, Councillor Neal and Councillor Morris. Those in favour of Amendment B? Those against? Abstentions? Amendment B is lost. Vote on Amendment C, Councillor McCullum and Councillor Noakes. Those in favour of Amendment C? (13). Those against? 46. Abstentions. Amendment C is lost. And finally, vote on Amendment D, Councillor Ali and Councillor Hungbo. Those in favour of Amendment D? 13. Those against? 46, and I'm going to say it again, abstentions. Amendment D is lost. We shall now carry out the procedure for taking a recorded vote on the substantive motion. The bell will be rung at the beginning and the end of 1 minute, after which the doors to the room will be closed. I advise all members to remain in their seats. The bell has been rung and the doors to the meeting have been closed. I shall now move to the vote on the substantive motion. I shall ask the clerk to call the names of all members in alphabetical order, and each member present shall declare if they are for, against, or abstain.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Evin Akoto is absent. Councillor Mary Ali. Councillor Jasmine Ali. Councillor Anud Al-Samarai. Councillor Peter Babudu. Councillor Maggie Browning. Councillor Jack Buck. Councillor Rhoda Burgess. Councillor Victor Chamberlain. Councillor Sunil Chopra. Councillor James Caldwell. Councillor Stephanie Cohen. Councillor Helen Dennis is absent. Councillor Dora Dixon-File. Councillor Nick Dolizo. Councillor Carl Easton. Councillor Gavin Edwards. Councillor Paul Fleming. Councillor Tom Flynn. Councillor Renata Hamvers. Councillor Barry Hargrove. Councillor John Hartley. Councillor William Hamburg. Councillor Sirajul Islam. Councillor Peter John. Councillor Nick Johnson. Councillor Eleanor Kerslake. Councillor Sarah King. Councillor Sonny Lamb. Councillor Lorraine Lauder. Councillor Richard Lemon. Councillor Maria Linford Hall. Councillor Richard Livingston. Councillor Rebecca Laurie. Councillor Alice MacDonald. Councillor Eliza Mann. Councillor James Makash. Councillor Hamish McCallum. Councillor Darren Merrill. Councillor Vicky Mills. Councillor Adele Morris. Councillor Graham Neal. Councillor Martin Ewens. He's absent. Absent. Councillor David Noakes. Councillor Damien O'Brien. Councillor Jason O'Kerr. Councillor Victoria Olisa. Councillor Leon Pollack. Madam Mayor? 4. Councillor Catherine Rose. Councillor James Salmon. Councillor Martin Seaton. 4. Councillor Andy Simmons. 4. Councillor Johnson C2. 4. Councillor Michael C2. 4. Councillor Charlie Smith. 4. Councillor Cleo Stones. Councillor Leanne Werner. Councillor Dan White, maybe absent. Councillor Catherine Whitten. Councillor Bill Williams. Councillor Kieran Williams. Councillor Ian Wingfield.
I will now announce the vote on the substantive recommendation. Right, those in favour of the substantive, 46. Those against, 0. Abstentions, 13. The substantive is carried. I shall now ask the clerk to come in at this point.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In accordance with the Budget and Policy Framework Procedure Rule 2G, the Cabinet recommendation has been amended, and this is treated as an in-principle decision. It will be implemented after 7 days unless the leader provides written notice that he objects within 5 days of this decision, or the leader can confirm his agreement at this meeting, and the decision can be implemented with immediate effect. Thank you.
Councillor Peter John, do you agree to the change to the Cabinet recommendation?
I agree those changes, Madam Mayor.
The Cabinet Member for Finance, Performance and Brexit will present the report, Capital Strategy and Treasury Management Strategy 2019 to 2020. Councillor Vicky Mills, you have 5 minutes in which to speak.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I will try and be as brief as possible. So on the one hand, this evening's report is very much nothing to see here. There's no change to the strategy that we all agreed last year, with the exception that the increase in public works loan board rates means that we are properly and doing really considerate thought about alternative borrowing sources going forward. On the other hand, of course, with our capital programme, there is loads to see here. Our 10-year capital programme, as I mentioned earlier, is huge, it's massive, it's worth over £2.6 billion. We should note that borrowing projections based on the current capital programme potentially add up to £1 billion more by the end of 2025, principally because of our really ambitious new homes programme on the HRA. But I think we all know that without huge and long-term investment, we will not tackle the housing crisis that we face. And our capital programme, we think, represents a proportionate response to that challenge. And finally, because we don't have it this evening, but we do intend to add some great things to the capital programme at Cabinet in March. I want to mention some of them here this evening. So there will be a multi-million-pound 10-year tree planting programme as part of our response to the climate emergency and to bolster our commitment to increasing biodiversity in the borough. There will be huge investment in street lighting to reduce energy consumption and add to those lower carbon emissions. And there will be a lot more, many more residential electrical vehicle charging points, which is great news. There will be more school street closures across the borough to tackle air pollution, as well as some other proposals around air pollution as well. And brilliantly, there is going to be a multi-million-pound investment in our outdoor gyms, in our community sports infrastructure, and across our adventure playgrounds, which is great news to ensure that our children have safe and secure places to play, and equally every resident has the ability to kind of get involved in activity and to lead a healthier life. And finally, of course, I'm going to put you to it, there will be investment in a new cinema at the Blue, which is brilliant news.
There are no amendments to this report. Does any member wish to speak on this report? Councillor Leo Pollock.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's always one. I just want to really draw attention and recognise and absolutely praise the steadfast and absolute commitment of Councillor Mills and this entire administration towards our council house building programme. It is not easy to commit to council house building on this scale. It takes long-term commitment, it takes clear pledges in manifestos, and without that, officers do not rally behind that great mission that has been the hallmark of this council, certainly over the last 10 years. In the year that's just gone, in 1920, we spent 99 million on council house building, and in 2019, 2020, for those who don't know what I mean by that. In the year to come, 2021, we have a forecast spend of 237 million, the year after that 250 million. These are record sums that haven't been seen in council house building in any local authority anywhere in the country for over 40 years. But this is not just about a budget measuring contest. That's a contest that Jasmine Ali will always win, of course. This is about lives transformed, relief from the pressure of rent-driven poverty, relief from the pressure of overcrowding, children whose development and educational attainment is no longer thwarted by the cramped, poor quality housing that damages their health and lowers their horizons. But I think the key thing I want to also draw attention to that's within this report is the fact that this council, thanks to the leadership of Councillor Mills and the efforts of our officers, is now Britain's leading land buying council. This is really significant. This is really significant because we are buying new land to build new council housing estates. There is no other part of the country that can draw attention to this. And that's all thanks to the prudent but purposeful financial management and planning and the fact that we are a proper can-do council. And I want to recognise the efforts of Ian Young and Duncan Whitfield and all the number crunchers who have contributed to this as well. As we say, if anyone can, Duncan can. So I just want to recognise the enormity of that commitment, that unwavering, unbreakable commitment to 11,000 council homes and commend this report. Thanks.
Anyone else would like to speak on this? Okay. Councillor Vicky Mills to reply. No. Okay, she doesn't want to reply. She doesn't want to reply, so we shall move to the votes on the recommendations. Those in favour?
It's agreed, unanimous. Item 2.3, setting the council tax for 2020-2021. I shall ask the clerk to come in at this point.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. Council Assembly has agreed the level of council tax for 2020-21. This is set out in the Cabinet's recommendation as amended, as agreed in the substantive motion on item 2.1 as amendment by Amendment A.
We shall now carry out the procedure for taking a recorded vote. The bell will be rung at the beginning and the end of 1 minute, after which the doors to the room will be closed. I should advise all members to remain in their seats. The bell has been rung and the doors to the meeting have been closed. I shall now move to the vote on the substantive motion. I shall ask the clerk to call the names of all members in alphabetical order, and each member present shall declare if they are for, against, or abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Evelyn Akoto is absent. Councillor Bumari Ali. Councillor Jasmine Ali. Councillor Anud Al-Samarai. Councillor Peter Babudu. Councillor Maggie Browning. Councillor Jack Buck. Councillor Rhoda Burgess. Councillor Victor Chamberlain. Councillor Sunil Chopra. Councillor James Caldwell. Councillor Stephanie Cryan. Councillor Dora Dixon-File. Councillor Nick Dolizell. Councillor Carl Easton. Councillor Gavin Edwards. Councillor Paul Fleming. Councillor Tom Flynn. Councillor Renata Hamvers. Councillor Barry Hargrove. Councillor John Hartley. Councillor William Haungo. Councillor Sirajul Islam. Councillor Peter John. Councillor Nick Johnson. Councillor Eleanor Kerslake. Councillor Sarah King. Councillor Sonny Lamb. Councillor Lorraine Lauder. Councillor Richard Lehman. Councillor Maria Linford Hall. Councillor Richard Livingston. Councillor Rebecca Lurie. Councillor Alice MacDonald. Councillor Eliza Mann. Councillor James McCash. Councillor Hamish McCallum. Councillor Darren Merrill. Councillor Vicky Mills. Councillor Adele Morris. Councillor Graham Neal. Councillor David Noakes, Councillor Damien O'Brien, Councillor Jason O'Kerry, Councillor Victoria Olisa, Councillor Leo Pollack, Madam Mayor, for Councillor Catherine Rose, Councillor Jane Salmon, Councillor Martin Seaton, Councillor Andy Simmons, Councillor Johnson Situ, Councillor Michael Situ, Councillor Charlie Smith, Councillor Cleo Soames, Councillor Leanne Werner, Councillor Cap Whittam, Councillor Bill Williams, Councillor Kieran Williams, Councillor Ian Wingfield,
I will now announce the vote on the substantive recommendation. It was carried unanimously with 59 votes. Item number 3.1, Constitutional Changes 2019-2020, Contract Standing Orders, Financial Standing Orders, Member and Officer Protocol. The recommendations are formally moved. Do any members wish to speak on this item? No. Thank you. We shall now move to the vote on the recommendations. Those in favour? Everybody's in favour. Those against? Oh, somebody up there. So the vote was unanimous, 59. The vote on recommendations is carried. And thank you. That was the last item of business. The meeting is now closed.